Hello learners, you are welcome to Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates. In this mathematics class, I'll be taking you through a very interesting topic, which is bearing. Remember, we started this in our last class, which we learned the introduction to bearing. But in this new class, we'll be looking at how to determine the bearing of one point from another point. So, stay relaxed and let's learn together.
Eko Learners Support, a support program of the Lagos State Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education for WAEC and NECO candidates.
So we are looking at bearing of one point from another. So what are our learning objectives? Those are the key things that we should be looking for in this class. We should be able to sketch any given bearing. That is, if we are given a bearing of one point from the other, we should learn to sketch it because that will really help us in forging ahead. Then we should be able to determine bearing of 2 points from each other. That is, maybe bearing of point A from B and bearing of point B from A. So let's learn together. Let's recall that bearing is the angle measured clockwise direction from the north. In our last class, we established that bearing is the angle measured in clockwise direction from the north. And there are two types of bearing reading. We established it to be 3-figure bearing and compass bearing. So any form of bearing reading that you see that is having cardinal alongside the figure, that is compass bearing. Example, give us one. Yes, that means you've been following the class from the beginning. So when you have north 55 degree east, that is compass bearing. But when you have a bearing reading such as maybe 087 degrees, that is 3-figure bearing. Or you have a bearing of 273 degrees, that is 3-figure bearing. So those are the two types of bearing, compass bearing and 3-figure bearing. So this is often used when we are saying compass bearing because from the north down to east or from the north down to west, that is for compass bearing. And if you are reading from the south is southeast and southwest. Remember, we've treated that in our last class. Let's look at this. We are going to be connecting the knowledge of our last class to this new class. Consider the figure below, that is this diagram. Which of the options suggests the bearing reading of that point? Yes. Among these options, which one do you think suggests what the bearing reading of that point is? Okay. Oh, good. So let's see what our answer will be. Correct. If your answer is option B correct, why and how do we arrive at that? From the north to east is 90 degrees. So from east to south is another 90 degrees. So if the reading takes north, east, and it has moved to in between south and east, so at that point, the bearing reading is above 90 degrees and is not up to 180. At this point, it is above 90 degrees and is not up to 180. And that is why we have it in this as 127 degrees. Good. Now that we understand that, we want to look at the bearing from one point to another. And that is what this example is going to teach us. Let's take a look at this. The bearing of town P from town Q is 137 degrees. What is the bearing of town Q from town P? Students often make mistakes when interpreting this because of that word from, of, from, of. So we are going to simplify it in this example. The bearing of town P from town Q. because it's from town Q. So town Q is our point of reference. That is our starting point. So if this is our let's take this, the North Pole. If this is our town Q, this place being our town Q, let's just read. Now the bearing of town P from town Q, that means we are going to start from town Q. We read 137 degrees. So if it goes this way, from the north, 137 is going to be in between south and east because it's greater than 90 and it's less than 180. So it moves down. This then tells us where P is located. This bearing reading is 137 degrees. That is the bearing of P from Q. Now, what is the bearing of town Q from P? From P now, that P will now be the starting point. What is the bearing of town Q from P? So if you are looking at it from P, this is the north. So you read 90, 180, 270 till we get to that point that we do not know yet. So this is the bearing of town Q from P. If this is 137, this bearing reading now is what we are interested in. How best can we get that? If we look at this, you recall that it remains a particular value for this to complete 180. So whatever value that is there, whatever value that is here is what is here, using our knowledge of alternate angles. So for this to complete 180, it remains a particular value that we don't know. Let me put question mark. Whatever that question mark is what is also here. If you have that knowledge, you can now say, if I had completed this back to north, it would have been 360, right? But I did not complete it. It remained this question mark. That means it's going to be the bearing of this, we have it to be equals to 360 subtracted. You are going to subtract the question mark. I just put it there, question mark. So what would the question mark be from here? The question mark will be equals to 180 degrees minus 137 degrees, right? Which, when you subtract it, what would that give us? That would be that would be 40, which is 43. Yes, 43 degrees. So it is that 43 degrees that we now bring here. That means 360 degrees minus 43 degrees, which is going to be, when we subtract this one, we are going to have 43 from 60, that's 17. 317 degrees. 317 degrees. So you agree with me that this bearing here, that is this, the yellow part, the bearing of town Q from P, therefore, bearing of Q from P, bearing of Q from P is what we have here. Isn't that interesting? Good. So learn that when they say bearing of and bearing from, the bearing of town P from town Q from where it is, that is your starting point, referring to your of. Very good. So let's take another one. This question, if the bearing of Ikeja from Agege is south 56 degrees east, determine the bearing of Agege from Ikeja. Now, similar to what we did last, however, this one is given to us in compass bearing. So the basic aim of this class is to be able to determine the bearing of a point from another point. So let's interpret this into diagram. Remember, we must learn to sketch correctly. If the bearing of Ikeja from Agege, so what will be our starting point? Correct, Agege. Yes, the bearing of Ikeja from Agege is, so let's have it this way. That is Agege, even though you are not seeing the bridge there. So this is the North Pole. We call this place Agege. So we are reading, remember, bearing is from the North Pole. The bearing of Ikeja from Agege is south 56 degrees east. Since it is southeast, this is our south, this is our east. So southeast, you read 56 degrees from the south, compass bearing from the south. So south, 56 degrees will probably be somewhere here, right? So now, this will then be Ikeja. So our interest here is this angle southeast, which is 56 degrees. So what will be the bearing of Agege from Ikeja? Bearing of Agege from Ikeja. So the bearing of Agege from Ikeja now, there are two ways to view it. However, start from three figures so that you can have clear understanding. From the north, it rolls this way, 180, 270, and it's bigger than 270, but it's not up to 180. So, with this red one, that is the three-figure bearing. But because the question is given to us in compass bearing, we must also return it to them in compass bearing. That means your compass bearing is the angle here. And if you look at it, the compass bearing is northwest. Northwest. So let's keep that northwest. What we just need to determine is this angle. So how can we determine this angle? Again, using the knowledge of alternate angles. Whatever this will be, whatever this is what this will be. Alternate angle, Z angle. Maybe you have forgotten when you have this. If these are parallel, so whatever this place is, this angle is what this angle is when they are parallel. Alternate angles. So that is the knowledge we are using. So this will then be 56 degrees, right? If this is 56 degrees, are we together? That means you have to read it northwest. Northwest. So this is going to be north 56 degrees west. Fantastic. However, if you were to leave it in three figures, you already know what to do. Let's make a guess to know if you are right. If we are to leave it in three figures, like what value do you think it will fall into? You said? Great. The value will be greater than 270 and be less than 360 because it falls on this part, northwest, where the northwest is between 270 and 360. So the value is going to be greater than 270 but less than 360. It will be less than 360 with the angle of 56 degrees. That means in three figures is going to be 360 degrees minus 56 degrees, which will give you 304. So if you want to return it to them in cardinal bearing, north 56 degrees west. If you want to return it to them in compass bearing, in 3-figure bearing, 304 degrees. Don't worry, we can call this interchangeably. Compass bearing is the same thing as cardinal bearing. So when you hear compass bearing or cardinal bearing, we are talking about the bearing that has to do with north something degree east, or north something degree west, or south something degree east, or south something degree west. When it's beginning to have those poles with the figure, it is compass bearing. But when the figure is not there, the pole is not there, the cardinal point is not there, it's just numbers. It is 3-figure bearing. Remember, whenever you make calculation in bearing and your answer is less than 100 degrees, you either express it in compass bearing or you express it in 3 figures. And when you are expressing it in 3 figures, if it is less than 100 degrees, you add 0 to it. Let's say, for example, you have calculated bearing of a point. It gives you 75 degrees. You don't return 75 degrees. If you do so, you have returned angle and not bearing. So rather, you say 0.75 degrees. Interesting. So let's try out something on our own now without understanding. Given this question to practice, the bearing of town A from town B is 155 degrees. What is the bearing of town B from town A? And also, we have this. So I'll give you 2 minutes. You can pause, practice. Okay, you're welcome back. Now I want to believe that you've had nice time racking your brain around these concepts. Now it is time for us to solve it together. Practice question, question number 1. Solution to the practice question. The bearing of town A from town B. So our reference point will be town B because that is where it's starting from. So if this is our town B, let's take note of that as town B. Remember the North Pole. So the bearing of town A from town B is 155 degrees. So you have to read clockwise 155 degrees. 90, 155 will be at the second part here. It is greater than 90, less than 180. So it's going to fall somewhere here. So that will be town A. This will be our town A. Remember, this is 155 degrees. Now we are interested in finding the bearing of town B from town A. Remember, this is the North Pole of town A. Because this is in 3-figure bearing, let's return our answer in 3-figure bearing. So this goes this way, 90, 180, 270, then stops here. It is more than 270, but less than 360. So if you are thinking about it in cardinal bearing, that means northwest. Northwest. Good. But in 3-figure bearing, how do we do this? This did not complete 180. Whatever that it is for this to complete 180, that missing angle that remains is what we have here. That missing angle here is what we have here. So to get this bearing, we now say bearing of bearing of B from A, bearing of B from A will be equals to, remember, this is supposed to be 360, right? So it's going to be 360 degrees minus whatever angle that is left here. Okay, we don't know the angle, but we know that that angle is gotten by subtracting 155 from 180. So you can now say minus 180 degrees minus 155 degrees. So to do that, that will be 360 degrees. Let's minus, when you subtract this, what do we have? Yes, 25 degrees. That means when you subtract 25 degrees from 360, you have 335 degrees. So the bearing of B from A is 335 degrees, which you can as well convert that to cardinal bearing. I want you to try that on your own. So let's find solution to question number 2. The bearing of Ikorodu from Oshodi is south 37 degree west. South 37 degree west. Bearing of Ikorodu from Oshodi. South 37 degree west. From Oshodi. So Oshodi is the starting point. That is, let's leave this as our Oshodi. Yes. Don't worry about the Oshodi. So your Oshodi is here. This is the north. The bearing of Ikorodu from that point now. So the bearing of Ikorodu from that point is south 37 degree west. Remember, it's southwest. So your south is here, going to west. You read from south, southwest. South, then 37 degrees. So this is probably your Ikorodu now. So now that we have done that, this is Ikorodu. Yes, Ikorodu city. Now this bearing is 37 degree, right? Remember, southwest. So 37 degrees. Then the question is, what is the bearing of Oshodi from Ikorodu? From Ikorodu, this is the north of Ikorodu. So from Ikorodu, it falls into northeast. Northeast. So you have it here, northeast. You determine this angle. Obviously, this angle is less than 90 degrees, right? It's less than 90 degrees. So to do that, it means using our knowledge of alternate angles. Remember, this is 37 degrees, so automatically this is going to be 37 degrees. However, we can only write it in cardinal bearing or 3-figure bearing. So for it in cardinal bearing, the bearing of Oshodi from Ikorodu will now be north 37 degrees east. North 37 degrees east. If it is in 3-figure bearing, you want to write it in 3-figure, it's going to be 037 degrees. That's all. So if you have done it in any of these, you can give it to yourself. So we've come to the end of today's class, which I believe that now you've learned how to sketch bearing, and you have also learned how to determine bearing of one point from another. So for your comments, questions, suggestions, or anything you may want to pass across to us, do well to reach us on our social media handles being displayed on your TV screen. Till we come your way next time, maths is fun.
Acing your WAEC and NECO examinations has been made easy by the Lagos State Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education with the Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO Candidates television program. Join seasoned teachers as they take you through these core subjects: mathematics, English language, physics, chemistry, and biology, targeting the exact syllabus of WAEC and NECO. Watch Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates on this station. Learners can also connect with Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates through these social media platforms to access more educational content and give their feedback. Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates. Pass your examinations with flying colors.